this webinar draws on real life experiences of local businesses that Richard and I work with, and considers ways in which we can look after our customers and staff to ensure they have a really positive employee and customer experiences in these times of riding the COVID coaster. So before we get underway, let me do some introductions. So my name's Kirsty and I'm a HR consultant and I run a company called Face to Face HR. I've been in HR for many years, probably over 15 years now. I have quite a bit of experience of trying to ensure employee engagement, and it's a real passion of mine because I think that's when you get the best out of people for your business. Richard, do you want to do a brief intro?
Yeah, hello, my name's Richard Knight. I run Insight 6 customer experience organisation, working with organisations to reduce the gap between businesses' perception of how well they do for their customers and actually what the customers receive. I've been running this for 4 years now, predominantly in the Wiltshire and Dorset area, and recently been joined by my wife Lucy Knight in the business. And we work with organisations from any sector and any size.
Lovely, thank you. So as Richard said before, if you want to ask any questions, you can pop them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end, and we'll also ask you the questions as well. So next slide please, Richard. So the COVID coaster is not a ride any of us expected to be on or want to be on, and at the moment, as you've probably heard in the news, over a quarter of workers nationwide are on the government furlough scheme. Some workers will return to work and are being incentivised to do so, and others will face the prospect of finding new work. Emotions and stakes are running really high at the moment on all sides. How can business owners keep their customers engaged and ready to return and ready to spend their money? And equally, how do you keep your employees engaged and ready to work when the time comes? So let's look at these in turn. Next slide, please. So picture this, a small restaurant chain of 25 employees across 4 sites. There's a small senior team made up of the owner of the restaurants and the restaurant manager from each site. They know that customer is king, and at their monthly management meetings in normal times, they gather together and pour over graph after graph detailing what they know about their customers, what products are doing well, and where there needs to be more focus. So they're very customer centric, and invest in practices to support this is proven to add value to their company. Putting what their customer wants above everything else, and at the heart of every decision they make. So that's the way they think. So far so good. But let's have a look. Next slide please, Richard. In terms of employees, yes, they have information on that as well. They measure absence, which is always way too high. Attrition is also measured, but again is quite high, although they're not quite sure why. Although hiring isn't a problem, people need to work. So that's what they have on their employees. So heads down, looking at data that isn't necessarily giving them the information they need or giving it to them in a timely fashion. They always seem to be reacting to situations, and they always seem to be slightly on the back foot. But we have, with the COVID coaster, a perfect opportunity here for everybody to step up. The opportunity for customers to know that you mean business with a fabulous customer experience, but also the opportunity to improve the employee experience. For both groups of people, it's really important to stop measuring what has already happened. That's great information, but it has its place. But measure what is happening in the here and now, and most importantly, be agile enough to act upon it. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. Next slide, please. So someone once said, it's not what happens to you, but the way that you react to it that matters. I think it might have been Peter Drucker said that. And someone else said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is a sign of insanity. I think that was Einstein. And both useful, they're both very useful quotes. And what we have here is the opportunity, like I said before, an opportunity to view things differently, to step up and change things. have to change anyway, so let's make it a really positive experience as far as we can. So let customers know that you mean business with a fabulous customer experience. And alongside that, let your employees know that you mean business and improve the experience of being an employee. But how on earth are you going to achieve that? Well, for a start, stop measuring what's already happened. This data can be really helpful, but what would be really helpful is knowing what people think and being brave enough to act upon it. And when I say people, I mean your customers and your employees. If I take a moment to refer back to the restaurant, if a member of waiting staff identifies that a customer was having a miserable time, they can do nothing about it. They might have to go and talk to their manager, and then the manager doesn't really know the detail around it, and it all becomes a bit complex. So in the end, the customer demands a discount or wants to see the manager, and it's all a bit, you know, miserable really. The best restaurants I've been to, and they're not fancy restaurants by far, but they tend to trust their waiting staff. And if a few things keep going wrong with a certain table, the waiting staff are trusted to use their experience and perhaps give a discount or a free pudding, something to ease the pain before anything escalates. The owner has probably in the background provided them with skills and options of what they could do in that sort of situation, which in turn gives their waiting staff some wiggle room and the ability to put things right quickly, so they're agile. So there's trust and there's agility there. This is great for the customers, and it gives the employer a sense of responsibility and that they're trusted as well. So I get a bit overexcited about this, so let's break it down a little bit more. Can I have the next slide, please, Richard? So at the moment, many businesses keep the customer experience on one side of the fence, as you can see with Anna, wondering what to do with herself, what business she wants to go with. And then you have employees on the other side of the fence, and there's Matthew happily working away. Both areas are equally as important to a business, but very often businesses have a customer strategy that they might establish at the beginning of the year, and they have an employee strategy, and the two never really meet. They aren't so different. Next slide, please. If we boil it down, what you want your customer to have is a positive experience. That's a happy customer. A place they want to return to, that's repeat business, and a place they will recommend. So you want those referrals, you want them to bring other people through the door with them. And it's the same for the employees. You want them to have a positive experience, they're a happy, productive team, a place where they want to return, they turn up for work, absence goes down, and a place they will recommend to more customers, their friends and family, and on social media and everything, and also to future hires, because people want to work for you. So just remove the fence between the two. Next slide, please, Richard. So evidence shows there is a direct link between employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. How often have you encountered a terrible service at a restaurant or bar and thought that was a miserable experience, I wouldn't want to work there, I'm definitely not going to go back, and you mention it to a few people. Worst case scenario, there's a poor review on TripAdvisor, and nobody likes those. Or if you're a different sort of business, this could be on Google or Glassdoor, and employees do look at Glassdoor. As an employee, you need to look deeper at these sort of situations. Why is service considered poor? It probably isn't simply a case of dealing with poor performance, although that might be the case in some rare situations. If you're doing that, you're looking in the wrong place. It's a case of empowering the employee experience. The employee is engaged and they're satisfied in their job. If they are satisfied in their job, they will be better equipped to deal with your customers in the way that you want them to. If the customer receives a good service engagement, then their engagement is high and they will sing your praises from the rooftops. But not only with your customer sing your praises, but so will your employees, and it's all win-win. Obviously there would be a down points, but overall you want that positive experience. So the business case for employee engagement is really strong. Poor engagement costs businesses money in hiring costs, absenteeism, toxic workers. Workplaces with high employee engagement outperform their competitors with increased profitability, productivity and customer ratings. Can I have the next slide, please, Richard? So here's my little tip sheet of ways of engaging. So there's loads of ways of engaging your employees. Some are more people-centric, and others are more sort of business orientated. So starting right in, if we just start right at the beginning of somebody's employment journey with you, any induction needs to be a really warm welcome. Being toured around an office and introduced and sat at your desk is quite daunting for anyone, even the most confident person. So as a minimum, you should be sending them an email or giving them a call a week before, setting out things like where they should park, who will meet them at the front door, what they should wear, just to make things really sort of easy and comforting, and also something that they'll be doing over the first couple of days. So on their first day, making sure somebody meets them and buddies up for at least a couple of hours just to make sure they settle in okay. Making sure they've got a laptop or phone if that's part of their job. And their manager should be available as well. For even if they can't be in the office, they should be around for a conversation on the phone. And especially with all this technology at the moment, video calls, go for it. And ensure you have a welcoming and uplifting staff handbook. So many of my clients that I start working with, and I start by kind of helping them maybe write a good staff handbook or something, have one that just contains policies and procedures. There's nothing, no welcome from the business, nothing about the history, nothing about little things of how things are done around here that would just be really helpful. Like, do you have to pay for tea and coffee, or are they supplied? How is the fridge organised in terms of lunches? All those little things. You also need those policy documents as well in there, but it can be a really welcoming document just to help people know how things are done. It also becomes a good reference point for existing employees as well. You don't want a handbook that you give to somebody that simply just kind of focuses on grievance, disciplinaries, and how they might be terminated from their employment within the first week. It's all that would be quite depressing. There are so many types of engagement activities, like I said before, from traditional office parties and celebrations, team buildings and fundraising, through to more modern approaches. So one of my clients uses hack nights, which are a nice idea. So he's a tech business. When they have business problems, he asks for volunteers and they arrange to come together at a suitable time, sometimes in the evening, afternoon, or whatever, early morning. And it's quite loud and outrageous. They've got bits of paper everywhere and they just throw ideas in and just try and solve it. And they're just as creative as possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's really good at building that engagement. The employees feel part of something. How about using social media to showcase employee successful stories? So if somebody's performing really well, you could share that with the world on Twitter or something. And it also creates a really attractive employer brand as well. And your employees are already on social media 24/7, just as your customers are, so join them. You can create peer appreciation things. So everybody knows, if you were doing team sports at school, still do, when you had like the players trophy, it was a really lovely trophy to receive. It's probably one of the best ones out of all the trophies you can get. Not that I ever did get any trophies, but you can create something similar for your business. So it's not the people high and mighty deciding or looking at data, it's your peers saying, actually, this person has done a great job this week or this month or this quarter. And in terms of engaging staff through communication, these activities need to be quite frequent, regular and accurate. So having a drumbeat of communication throughout the business is a really good idea. And a good example of this that I used to use in one of the businesses I used to work in before I went freelance was around building it around our business plan. So every year we wrote an annual business plan around November, December in preparation for January. And we'd have the framework and then we would request ideas for the business plan in advance from the team. Take those on, build some into it, write the business plan. And then we'd have a team day, we'd communicate that business plan. Gauge their reaction, questions, ideas, and if necessary, we'd change it. Then you'd have a final version and ready for January, or that would be finished until January. And then you can filter those objectives coming out of the business plan down to your employees through their objectives and goals. And they can then see how they directly tie into the success of the business. Just take a sip of drink a minute. And then from that, you can report back to the team on, say, a monthly or quarterly basis on how things are going against that business plan, against your KPIs. And this really takes the business from a position of secrecy to transparency around data. I'm not saying share every little bit of detail with them, but there are elements of that you can share. You can measure progress and you can make the data available. So let them know retention rates, tenure, the cost rise rate, which is the percentage yearly salary increase, productivity levels. You can even have a happiness index, which you could test out every now and again. And if you have a bonus scheme that requires a bonus pool to become payable, you could make that completely transparent. Let them know how far away you are from that pool being created. Once you're in it, what you need to do to stay in it. So they know the kind of the impact that they have directly on everything. And an additional beat to the comms could include things like suggestion boxes, pulse surveys, internal newsletters. Now that's a whole load of stuff, and there's still so much more stuff out there. Loads of good books and papers on the internet, and you don't have to do them all because that would just be, nobody would get any work done at all. But you can pick a few that would work for you. And then just have some of the more traditional approaches and open communication approaches like recognition activities. So employee of the month, worked in some environments. I've worked in an environment where it worked really well, and then I worked in another where it was really cheesy. So you just kind of have to gauge your workforce, I think. Celebrate birthdays, if you like doing that sort of thing. Boss of one of my old companies used to phone people on their birthday and sing. Imagine a delivery driver getting a happy birthday message from the top person. You could celebrate work anniversaries. Perhaps you could pop a bonus in their pay of 25 quid for year one, 50 quid for year two, up to a capped amount, because otherwise you'll end up forking out loads over the years. And of course, thank you notes and just saying thank you goes a long way as well. So like I said, loads of ways to engage people. Like the one I mentioned earlier about the restaurant owner giving the waiting staff options to deal with unsatisfied customers before it gets out of hand. That is a way of engaging your staff. So that, that was about training them and giving them options. But start off small, but make it meaningful. So that's kind of me rambling on about all that, what I'm kind of passionate about. But I'll hand over to Richard now, who's going to get into the detail of measuring how people feel. Richard, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Some great tips there. As I say, we are recording this, so if you'd like copy, please do let us know. We can send that on to you. That's not a problem at all. So we've heard a lot about the employee-customer relationship and how often it can be seen as being one or the other from a strategy point of view, and never the twain shall meet. So from an employee point of view, it's really important to understand how they're feeling, as Kirsty mentioned earlier on. So what we're going to do first of all is get a little bit of interaction from everybody. And we're going to start talking about, whilst you're on this COVID coaster, we're going to do a little poll, and I'd like you to answer A, B or C when the poll comes up. And A is, are you, as an employee, just getting on with stuff? Are you like this chap on the mobile phone? He's on this roller coaster. He's just thinking, that's fine, everything's okay. I'm just having a nice chat with my friend whilst I'm going around this mad roller coaster or COVID coaster that we find ourselves on. Or are you B, as an employee? You're on the COVID coaster. You realise that you can't get off it at the moment. So you're looking at what you have to do to make it work for you, and you're getting on with it, although you are making sure you keep abreast of everything that's going on? Or are you C, shutting your eyes and being on this COVID coaster is the most horrible and awful thing you've ever had, and you're never going to get off it? You feel like it's really, really impacting you. And in fact, when you're at work or if you're remotely working, you never go out of the house. So are you A, B or C? So what we'll do is just ask Kirsty to launch that poll.
I have launched the poll.
You have launched the poll. So if everybody could just answer A, B or C on the poll, just to see what's going on out there.
Swing amongst all three.
That. Great. Okay, so I think we've got 5 out of 5 there. So if we just end that poll and
Shall I
share the results, yeah, that'd be great. So what we can see there is that we've got an A and a B, but a bit of a 60-40 split there. So majority just are getting on with things, and they're taking their calls on the COVID coaster and carrying on. So, and B, we've got some people realizing that's going to happen. So the key thing there, and it relates back to Kirsty's point around how everybody's going to be different, and we're all thinking in slightly different ways. Our emotional connection to what's going on can be very different for very different employees. So therefore, a one size doesn't fit all. However, we've got to make sure that we ask as many questions as we possibly can through as many channels to ensure we're understanding what's going on. So thank you very much for your input there. So what we can see is that from an employee point of view, there's lots going on. And from a safety and motivation point of view, that can impact greatly on what the performance is like for your employees, and therefore what the experience is like for your customers, because a reduced engagement level and motivation level of your employees can be seen. I'm sure you've seen it when you've been stood in those different shops or in a different business, and somebody clearly isn't an engaged person within it, and you are receiving a less than excellent experience with that organization. And that can mean the face-to-face pieces, but it also can mean what are the standards of the marketing that comes out of a business? What are the standards of the follow-up that comes from a business? So it impacts all of that customer experience. Now, recently, what we've done is we've used our team safety checker that we have running at the moment across the UK. And as you can see from the bottom there, there's been a total of 13,000 feedback requests have been sent via our feedback mechanism, which is based on a pulse survey. And we can see that out of those responses, 14% of team members did not feel safe when asked, do you feel safe when it comes to COVID when you're at work? That was on the first request. And as we know, we're going to keep that feedback going and asking people. And the second time they were asked, on the week 2, that actually dropped to 3%, and then it dropped again at week 3 and then stayed the same at week 4. So why does that happen? Well, the reason why that happens is because there was an intervention between week 1 and week 2. Now, that intervention might have been as simple as somebody picking the telephone up and saying, tell us how you're feeling. We see that you're not feeling so well. So the system that we utilize actually provides an immediate notification to the HR or the business leader to actually pick the telephone up to that particular employee and ask what they can do to help them feel safe at work and therefore feel more motivated. And when those people are actually back in work, that's one side of things. But of course, we've still got lots of people who are out remote working. So we also, on the same system, can ask those people who are remote working, how do you feel from a motivational point of view? And what we found is that 23% of employees said they did not feel motivated whilst working at home. That was again on the first, on the first request for information, and that did drop over time. However, from a business point of view, when you've got people working remotely, although we've heard of productivity going up during lockdown, there's also now figures showing that, as you can see from our figures, that actually almost a quarter of the workforce who are working remotely, not being motivated, there's potential for some real issues there. So that asking the questions of your employees can then actually impact how you deal with your employees, and therefore how much of a great experience your customers then have. So what we know is that your staff and your customers are both on the COVID coaster. We're all on it. We're all in the middle of it. And we're all having our highs and lows on the COVID coaster. If we think back to the story that Kirsty first told about our restaurant, our 25 staff and the 4 sites, how is Matt feeling when he's in that work environment, when he's going to work? Is he feeling like he wants to return? If he's been on furlough, does he want to come back? How do we know? Have we asked him? On the other side, we've got Anna. How is she feeling about the whole situation? Restaurants have opened. People are starting to go back, but they're not going back as rapidly as perhaps people first thought. We know from our data gathering that only 11% of people on that Super Saturday, as it was called, actually said they were going to go to a restaurant or a public house. And we could see that, particularly from the area that we're in, that it was very quiet on that Saturday evening. And actually, a lot of the restaurants and pubs didn't open their doors on the Saturday. So there are peaks and troughs, highs and lows, and we're going through the corkscrew a lot of the time as well when it comes down to the COVID coaster. So what we know is that in terms of the staff engagement point of view, if you have highly trained staff and they've got great skill levels and you've got high motivation levels, you are going to get a great customer experience. More often than not, though, when times of stress come on board, people feel that it is the processes that need to be trained in, and that is what they see as the skill. So at the moment, what we're finding is that a lot of organizations, and let's go back to our restaurant analogy or a restaurant story, the leaders there quite rightly have been given guidance from the government to actually be able to put in place lots of great measures, signage, ways of working, that are going to enable their staff to feel safe or safer and enable their customers to be able to come in. But what is really important from a staff point of view is it's beyond the process. It's not just about here's the structure, here's the process, follow it. It's about the emotional connection and the emotional intelligence that goes with that. Kirsty mentioned being able to give little incentives to staff to give to customers if things aren't quite right. Accountability is a critical way of engaging your staff at the moment and enabling them to work with the new ways of working and make it work for customers. Being able to interact on a level that means they're motivated. The motivational piece is really key. We know that from a motivational point of view, we all have 9 motivators at work. We all have them, but we all have them in different orders and they're all satisfied at different levels at different times. So do you really understand what motivates your teams? Do you really understand whether their motivation level is down? Through something like motivational maps, we can actually understand what motivation levels people have. And we can really understand why perhaps they're not engaging in something. What is it that they're not getting for their energy to be realized at work and therefore for them to deliver that great customer experience? So that's the staff piece. Moving on to the customer who's involved in it. This might make your eyes go a bit funny, but let's take Anna. She's going to the restaurant. This is the window of clarity and understanding that our customers, our clients, have currently got through on this COVID coaster. They've got lots of information, a lot of white noise, a lot of new processes that are being put in place. And as a customer, I have a very, very narrow window of clarity that I'm looking through at the moment. So Anna arrives at the restaurant. She's been online. She's seen that there's new ways of working. There's been a new page added to the website for the restaurant. It's got 25 different ways of contacting them. There's a whole list of things that she has to do and remember. There's a nice video that's been put online with showing how she should come into the restaurant. She then arrives, but she's got to go to a new town centre, to the town centre again, and there's different ways of doing that. She hasn't got a car, she's got to go on a bus. She's quite worried about going on the bus. Have I got to wear a mask? Don't I wear a mask? Can I sit here? Can't I sit there? Lots of white noise. So it finally comes to the restaurant, and there is somebody stood outside welcoming them, or just inside the doorway. There's lots of bits of tape all over the floor because it's the centre of town. Which bits of tape am I supposed to stand next to? Which bits of tape aren't I supposed to stand next to? Matt welcomes her on the door and says, please do come on in. Can I take your name, please? Certainly. There's lots of signs all over the place, but Anna can't see them because she's concentrating on Matt at the moment. She's concerned about, how do I go to the toilet? I'm going to sit down and have my nice bit of feed, but what do I do? Can I go? Can't I go? When do I go? Am I allowed in the toilet with other people, or is it just one at a time? I don't know. So when I'm sitting through the whole meal, and so on and so on. So that blurred view at the moment that our clients or customers have can constrict their clarity. So how can you go about ensuring that there's more clarity for your clients? So as a customer, time for a second poll. As a customer, how are you feeling at the moment? Are you getting on with everything? Is it all okay? Are you on the COVID coaster? Know what you've got to do? Still a little bit anxious, but you're getting on? Are you a B? Or are you C? I'm never going out. I'm not going out to any shops or any restaurants or going to see any businesses. So please let us know what you think. A, B, or C as a customer. Okay, we've got 3 out of the 4 now, and we've got 4 out of 4. So if we could end that poll, Kirsty, please, and share the results, that'd be great. So we've got a 50-50 split, but we've certainly not got anybody who is getting on with it and everything's fine and not worried about it. Now, it's interesting because from an employee point of view, as we remember, we had people who were getting on with stuff. And why is that? That's because you're aware and you're familiar with what's going on. And that's the key thing when it comes down to customers and your clients. They are not operating in your world. They are coming into your world, spending a little bit of time and then leaving again. So how can we make it or ensure that your customers are as comfortable and as confident as possible? And confidence is the key word. Customer confidence. Across Wiltshire and Dorset, we actually looked at what would increase customers' confidence with the reopening of various businesses. Now, that was across supermarkets, across B2B, across restaurants, on public transport, and big events. And as you could see, we asked them whether you would be more confident if staff were using PPE, if hand sanitizer was available, if the communication was clear around new processes, if there were helpful and professional staff were providing good customer service, or if there was nothing at all that would help. And what we saw is that you can see from the yellow blocks on the graphs here, clear communication of new processes was the key thing that came out across all those different sectors, whether it was supermarkets, businesses, restaurants, pubs, public transport, or new events, or big events, sorry. So we know that customers, and we know this because you're all expert customers, you want more confidence to go out, and that needs to be driven by communication. So moving on, how do we then ensure that that happens? What are the top tips we've got for communicating your processes clearly and concisely? The key thing is that is consistent communication across all channels. So if you are active and your business has social media, has email, has an email group, is using WhatsApp. We're finding that customers are using different channels in different ways now. Make sure that your communication is consistent across those channels and is clear and actually mixes it up, because some people like the videos that are sent out about new ways of working. Some people like to read it. Some people like a mixture. So make sure those are happening. Ensure all the staff are clear about what's going on. Again, this comes back to making sure that your customer and employee strategies work together. You know, make sure they understand what it is. Ask your staff to walk the client journey or the customer journey. If it's hospitality, retail, walk through it. Go and stand outside, queue, wait to come in, see what it feels like. If it's a B2B business, make sure that you're asking your teams to walk in as a customer through the front door. How comfortable is it for visitors to come to your business now that things are starting to relax a little bit? How comfortable is it for your visitors to come to an event? So we've really got to track what's going on there and put your employees in the footsteps, in the shoes of your clients or your customers. We've got to ask customers for feedback and employees as well. So make sure we're doing that. Number of different channels. We gave you the information from our team of visitor safety checker. It's a nice little way of ensuring that when people are coming back to work or are working remotely, they feel safe. But actually, it's also a great way of asking your visitors when they've been, how was your experience with us? Did you feel safe? Yes or no? Was there something else we can change for your next visit? So you're keeping in contact with them all the time. And when you find out these things, take appropriate action. You said, we did. Nice mantra. It's been around for many, many years, but it works. Don't ask for feedback if you're not going to do anything with it. It isn't a box ticking exercise. it is a way of emotionally connecting with your customers, because we know that that emotional intelligence that we can exhibit in the customer experience goes beyond the normal satisfaction levels of customers. Customers remember a great experience with your organization. It is the reflection. It is a day later when they look back and they remember how great it was when they left and you gave them that fond farewell, or you asked them for their feedback there and then, or you provided them with the little extra on their food order, whatever it was. That's the things they remember, and those are the things they will tell people about. And then what do you need to be doing when you're ensuring staff are supported? So it's going back to a couple of things that Kirsty alluded to. Safety first. How safe do your staff feel? If they feel safe, they're going to ensure that the customers feel safe. If they're not feeling safe, then their problems may well come across. Ask them. When you ask them and things aren't quite right, again, make sure action takes place. If things aren't in place, what can you do to make it better? Ask your staff, get them involved. And finally, the training side of things. So if there is an issue or a gap that you've found, and again, Kirsty alluded to this, is it a process or is it a people piece? If it's process, let's get that process trained in. If it's a people piece, let's spend more time with them. Let's talk to them online. Let's talk to them when they're back in the work environment. Let's make sure that we can develop the behaviors, because as we know, we can't change behavior overnight. It takes time. And as things change on the COVID coaster, as we get up to the next peak and we drop off the other side, are our staff ready to cope with the change that the clients are going to feel?